Hello everyone, welcome to the Hue living room. I'm Tracy Koga, and on the hot seat is the beautiful Sylvia Marusyk, and it is so good to see you in person, Sylvia. We met during COVID.
We did.
And you've been so wonderful in sharing your expertise, but also more importantly, just sharing yourself, sharing your real stories, your own personal stories, and we'll talk, more about that again tonight.
You.
But you know what? I also want to welcome all of my girls in the living room too as well. Rana, hello again, and Allie, it's so good to see you. And thank you, ladies. And I think Charlotte is joining us. Charlotte, text us if you don't have the link, okay, and we'll send it to you. But anyways, and Linda, I hope she's going to join in too as well. But this is really special tonight in the fact that you brought a topic up that you wanted to discuss, and I'm going, oh my God, this is good.
So the topic I thought we could discuss tonight is bullying, because it happens everywhere, right? It happens in workplaces, it happens in families, it happens on the schoolyard, and 80% of schoolyard bullies become managers. So don't turn that around. It's not 80% of managers are bullies. 80% of schoolyard bullies will become managers. So somewhere along the way, we've all met that person, we've lived with that person, and we've struggled to figure out what to do with that person.
How did they come up with that statistic, or did you just make that up, Sylvia? That is scary. That is scary.
Yeah. Well, I guess there's been some retrospective studies of, kids who bully and what happens to them. If it's about control issues, that follows them. If it's about having no control, that follows them. Whatever happens to us in childhood follows us.
Okay, so I kind of wanted to put the spin on adult bullying.
Yes.
Because for me, that can be the most detrimental. And not to say that any other form of bullying is less, because it's not, and it's terrible, and it's not condoned at all, but especially in the workplace, where we spend so much of our time.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts, and what are some of the things that you've seen, especially in your line of work?
So I think one of the things that is the most concerning to me is that as a professional speaker, talking about things like culture and leadership and respectful workplace and stress, as I would go across the country shortly after, like I would say within 2 years of the psychological harassment legislation coming out, I thought I would stop hearing stories, or at least hear less stories about workplace bullying from the people who attended my sessions. And what I heard was the reverse. What I heard is that it's actually worse, but people are being more subtle or harder to pinpoint, or it's becoming more difficult to what's the word I'm looking for? More difficult to discover, really, for other people. So I know I get an email from you. I can read between the lines because I know what you say to me when we're in the lunchroom. But if I take that email and try to lodge a respectful workplace complaint, or have an issue with psychological harassment, this is not evidence. So people have become more subtle because these policies tell us what we can't do, but they don't tell us what we should do. So they say, you've had children, you taught them don't hit. Did either one of them ever push instead?
Wow.
Right?
Right.
So that's what's happening. I'm not hitting. I didn't yell. I didn't make any comments about race or gender, but I make sure that person never gets invited to the staff, whatever. Or I make sure that the emails go to everyone on the team except that person.
Wow. Well, and I mean, we see some nods of heads, and I think we've all kind of felt that or been involved in that. Okay, so your hands are tied. So what do you do? And how do we solve this?
That's a really good question. I think one of the things that I feel is missing in the workplace is we have these policies, as I mentioned, that tell people what they're not allowed to do. So they don't do that. They don't yell, they don't swear, they don't call people names, but they do these other things. And what I think would be helpful is to look at respectful workplace agreements. What do we agree as a team is a code of conduct for us? So for example, if you and I work together and we work in a shared workspace, we might have as one of our agreements that when one of us comes in or leaves the room, we don't always have to acknowledge each other, because we could be doing that 25 times a day. So when I come into the room, I do not need to say hi, Tracy, for the 5th time. I'll just go to my workstation, right? Or if I do want to speak to you, I will request permission. Hey, Tracy, do you have a minute? That might be part of our agreement.
Oh, okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. No.
That's one strategy.
Wow.
I bet you the girls have another strategy, or have many strategies.
All right, so I want to welcome Charlotte. It's so good to see you. Sorry, I'm staring at the screen and not at the camera. No, but it's so good to see you. And Linda, thank you again. So wonderful. All right, I'm going to let some of you chime in here before we get even more further into this. What are your thoughts? Are any of you want to share any experiences? Rana? She's going.
Always. No, Sylvia, and you're absolutely right in terms of just there's no real solution at all if the current legislation is not working. And this is very common with policies in general, legislation in general. You need to always continuously do a review every few years, and these things should be actually live documents that are consistently changing to see what works and what doesn't work. I know earlier before we went on live, you had mentioned that you've noticed kind of, more people bringing up bullying stories. So that's the one part. So obviously there's big gaps between, what we're supposed to be doing and what's actually happening. The other part of it too is, there's also just general legislation that would demand that we don't be racist, sexist, homophobic, and all those really important components that kind of build the fabric of society, right? The differences that make us all unique but work together. So I think that we always do have options, but the issue I always find is, I agree with you 100%, is, when people want to do that, that's kind of where the concept of, in my world, like where I see microaggressions coming out, things like that, where you're saying something, but then you're not really saying it. And when somebody calls you out, you're like, it was a joke type of scenarios. Right. So there's a lot of stuff that's surrounding that. And people, when they're bullies, like, let's be honest, they're smart. They get smarter because they just get something from what they're doing. So, I know it's a kind of, pie in the sky belief or, vision, but obviously, people who are doing that clearly have something that they're missing in their existence, right? And we all know hurt people, but that, again, I shouldn't be the recipient of that. None of us should be the recipient of that, and especially when this is your workplace environment. So I think that there are kind of corporate responsibilities across the board, if we're talking about corporations, where you really it has to be a consistent teaching, consistent bringing up. It can't just be like, we have this code of conduct, let's never bring it up again until there's an issue. It should be constant discussions, and that's really how it's kind of in your face all the time, and people kind of know. And I hate saying this, my last point is sometimes people need to be made examples of. I'm not into public shaming. Well, sometimes I am, but but I do think that people do need to, be made examples of, because when one person sees someone getting away with it, it number one makes the perpetrator much more stronger because they think they can get away with it. It takes the victim, hurts them more, like, deeper, because they're like, well, nothing's ever going to change here. This is continuously happening. But it also changes the surrounding people who are watching it. So the whole thing is just kind of icky. I mean, that's the easiest way I could say it. But, you know, there's a lot of work to be done.
A
So
lot.
if I was going to say one thing, these documents need to be live always. It needs to be continuous.
Wow. And I guess then is how toxic environments become even more too as well, when
Yes.
people just kind of turn a blind eye, or they
Yeah.
continually get away with it too.
Absolutely. And one of the things Rana said is hurt people hurt people. That's not an excuse, it's an explanation, but it's not an excuse. But interestingly enough, not every bully believes they're a bully.
Oh.
For some people, it's the way they were raised, it's their normal, it's the only way they know how to do things. In one of the sessions I had, which was not about bullying, but it was about respectful workplace, I was in one particular company, and this older gentleman came up to me, and by older, I mean older than our age, and so like in his 40s. And he came up to me, and he looked so devastated at the end of this session, and I thought, he's got something really difficult to speak to me about, obviously. And he said to me, I think I'm a bully. And he said it in such a way, like, my heart just feels so heavy when I think about the way he said it. He was disgusted, but he had never conceptualized his behavior that way before. It was very, it really taught me something.
Yeah.
You know,
Wow.
we make assumptions about people based on what we know. You're a bully, so I know this about you, but we don't always know.
No.
And he did not realize he was a bully until that day.
I feel sorry now.
Right?
I know. I feel.
There's another side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Charlotte, I'm going to let you kind of comment on that, because I know that you deal with families. You deal with a lot of issues like this, dealing with mental health.
You know, I was just listening to what you were saying about the bully not realizing that they were a bully, and so I was gonna just add to that. Sometimes bullying in the workplace shows up as micromanaging or controlling, and so I was thinking of that gentleman. That may have been his style, which can come off as a form of bullying. Can I talk on the workplace side first?
Yes.
Before I go on the family side? Because that's why I came on tonight. Before Robin and I started our business together, I was involved with, I was bullied in the workplace. And I had never experienced it before. And it was actually quite devastating to me. And I was working for an organization. And often in organizations, they don't have an HR department. And there's no one above the executive director that you can go to. So the only person you can go to is the person that's bullying you in a lot of the cases. And the board is a policy board. So they don't want to talk to you because they're a policy board. And so when Sylvia was mentioning, the toxic work environment, you could be working in a great organization, and then all of a sudden one day it's not.
Yeah.
And the leadership really needs to take a look at, do we have policies in place that employees feel safe to bring something up? Is there somebody above their boss that you can share with if there's not an HR department? So Robin and I spent a lot of time when we're doing workplace mental health, workplace peer support is what does your leadership look like? What does where do you go if you have a complaint, if there's no one above your boss? And what does that look like? And for me, what happened was, and I talk a lot about this on the family side and everything I do, it started to affect me. My spidey senses were saying everything is not feeling right, and I was too afraid to share it. I didn't share it with a coworker. I took it home and I talked to my family about it, and they kept saying, you got to talk to the work. I'm like, who do I talk to? Can't talk to anybody. But I think if I had had the confidence to start to share it with a coworker of, this is how I'm feeling. Because what had happened in that case, others felt the same way.
Yes.
And I watched this amazing organization go from an amazing place to 13 out of the 15 staff quitting within 2 months of each other.
Wow.
So so it's taking a look at those kind of things. And so today Robin and I were having some really great conversations around this, and I had a friend who's joining us who's HR. She's in charge of HR of an incredibly large company, and part of her job was looking at how often people were taking sick leaves, and in what departments. It's a retail store. When did customer complaints started to show up? Because she was tracking what's going on. Is there something with leadership? Has something changed? And then she would start asking questions to see what was going on. So she's an amazing HR person. So she was looking at some of these measurables that she could tangibly look at that might be changing the culture of the workplace. But what happens when there's not that measurable or that accountability? And my hope, Sylvia, is that you're looking at that in part of your talks and encouraging that dialogue for smaller businesses. Yeah.
You bet. Yeah. We're trying to bring this stuff to the foreground. When I do strategic planning with the leadership, it's all based on employee interviews. So hopefully they're listening. The companies I work with are listening, but we have a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm putting my hand up. I've experienced that too. And Charlotte, what you just said. Oh, and yep. And Charlotte, what you just said is like hits home like an arrow piercing my heart. I want to know tonight. Okay, so what do you say to the person that's bullying you? Because God darn it, I would come home every night and I would think of all of the things I should have said or I should have done. And the next day, I forget them all, because when confronted, you're just like, and you have that horrible feeling inside of your gut. You're stressed. You treat the people that should be treated well, or your family or your spouse, terribly because you're so unhappy. And at the end of the day, right, it's yourself that you really have to think about. Yeah. So I don't know. Do you have words of wisdom? I mean, not that they're going to do me any good, but
because we've all, I would bet every single person here tonight has been bullied. I will bet it. I'll eat my right shoe if I'm wrong. And
or Rocky will eat it.
Or Rocky will eat it. But here's what I'm thinking. Most of us don't have the words in that moment, but if you can develop some confidence, because here's the thing, if there's no victim, there's what power does the bully have? I remember saying to a supervisor who was being bullied by his plant manager, I said, if you are not a victim, he's going to move on. He's going to move on. He's going to move out. He's not going to find what he needs here. Because a bully needs a victim. There is a lack of control somewhere in their life, so they take it where they can, or they are used to being in control, or they're driven by fear, or there's something not right, obviously. So he decided to stand up to the bully, and when the bully said, this particular gentleman's favorite tactic was to walk up to people and say, I could fire you today. Because I have that power. I might not, but I could. And he would just make that statement and then go off. So one day, this supervisor took to heart, like, don't be a victim. So he says to the plant manager, go ahead. And he got fired. He took my advice and he got fired. That's not what I was planning. But in the most magical way that the universe does things, that was exactly what he needed, because he went from that being fired to owning his own company. And he is such a happy, successful businessman. And it was exactly the push he needed. So it worked out.
And then hopefully he's not doing that practice to his employees.
No, he's such a gentle, non-alpha kind of person.
Well, Allie, you want to join in here. Words of wisdom.
Yeah, this is a really great conversation. It could go on forever, I'm sure. And like there's so many layers to it to look at, right? I've definitely had that experience myself. I had it terribly, just to the point where it was absolutely like taking over my entire life. I got so unwell with my mental health during this period, and it's a very similar situation to Charlotte's in the sense that there's nobody to report to, right? So it's a really big intense feeling of helplessness. And so and for me, I did talk to a colleague, and that was kind of my area of how it all worked out for me. So in the end, I actually ended up getting fired from there, but it's very much like this situation you just talked about. It was the best thing that could have ever happened to me. Like
Yeah.
being able to just get rid of them and get rid of that piece of my life was absolutely the best thing that has ever happened to me. It's incredibly unfortunate that we have to kind of sometimes go through something for another good thing to happen, but I find that's just kind of the pattern of my life these days, and for other people too. So yeah, I think it's a lot of prevention stuff when it comes to tactics and strategies and whatnot. And unfortunately, there aren't a lot of them, but I think that the prevention is huge. So like being able to sit down with your colleagues and say, okay, you know what, if we're having like open honestness across the table once a week. You get kind of flustered when you're working, like everybody, we're human. We're exhausted, we're running on a bunch of different things in our head, a bunch of different files are open, so we're not going to be perfect all the time. That's totally cool, but it's about letting people know, like, man, you were grouchy, but being able to do it in a funny way, being able to have those connections so that we're not just colleagues and we're not just looking at each other and making eye contact, same routine, talking to each other like, I'm stressed, I need somebody to take over this, or hey, like, I'm going through a lot at home right now, so just a heads up, if I'm off my game, let me know, or if I'm crabby, call me on it. And I've done that when my mental health is off. I will tell my colleagues and say, hey, or if I'm doing a meditation or a medication change, I'll say, I'm on a med change right now. If you get like a funky alley in the next couple days, that's all it is. Like, just heads up and just roll with me here. So I think it's about having those open conversations and dialogue, which also helps just foster an environment that isn't toxic, an environment that's real, and everything like that. And another thing is standing up to the bully, right? We want it to be able to have it in the early prevention so that when you do stand up to them, you're not losing it on them, right? Because
Right.
you poke the bear a lot enough, it's gonna go at you. So I think being able to have those conversations before we like just lose it is key, because I've been there too, where I'm like, I just lost it. You push somebody too far, and it happens in every context. So being able to have all those prevention things, and I think that happens a lot with conversations. When I used to do talks for United Way, going into the workplaces and talking to them about mental health, I think it was just a nice little grounding piece for them, like just bringing it back down when we're in this big, busy corporate world, just bringing a little bit of reality into the boardroom for a quick minute, and just reminding everybody that we all have stuff going on. We're all humans. We all, we're all working for the same thing, but just cut each other some slack, kind of thing. So I just think kind of creating that dialogue and having those environments is definitely a way. I don't think it's ever going to go away. I thought it was going to go away after high school. Yeah, I was like out the window,
It's
just like
worse
doubled.
now.
Yeah, it's worse. So I mean, I think it's just about having the tools and the resources and the conversations. It's a harm reduction type of strategy, but I think it's a way that we can look at it.
No, you're right, and it is so much so important to have that dialogue. But again, if it's so hard to approach someone, that is like the hard part. And I'm just like thinking, yeah, we're seeing, like, I left. I mean, Charlotte left her situation. Allie, you left. You left. And we all did really well. But what irks me, and I shouldn't be, but is those bullies are still there, and they're still doing it.
Yep.
And do they not realize? Like, you met that man that was like, oh, and like shameful. But it took someone like you to hold the mirror in front of them. But sometimes you can hold the mirror in front.
Yeah.
And they still.
I don't want to look.
Or they.
Right.
They still don't realize it.
Yeah.
And that's so frustrating.
One of the things that worked for me in the last situation I was in with a bully was two things, actually. One was I love this phrase and I hate this phrase. What you permit, you promote.
Mm-hmm.
Like it can be a blessing or a curse, right? So I realized in this last situation, the last incidents of bullying that I experienced, that what I permit, I promote. So the more I was able to set some boundaries, like, you know, I am going to leave this room right now. I actually just, I completely forgot about this, but I actually had an experience of being bullied over the phone by someone, and I stopped recently, and I, believe it or not, it was somebody that was, I was telling your husband I'm doing a kitchen reno. It had to do with my kitchen reno. So anyways, I was being bullied by this alpha gentleman, and he I said to him, you know what, did you actually just say the word whatever to one of your customers? He said, I did. And I said, I'm going to respectfully say goodbye and wish you a great day, and I can't wait to hear when my things will be ready for delivery. And I hung up on him. And I did that because I had really spent most of my life experiencing bullying in one form or another, and had really struggled to do that right up front, like right at the beginning. Like, don't pass go. Don't even start. Because once it starts, what we permit, we promote. So that's one thing. Second thing that I think would be great in workplaces is if we could, when we notice it, defend the person who is being bullied. Call it out, you know, show up for them and give them some strength, and do it to the bully. You know, support the victim to the bully. I did that once. It didn't go well, but the outcome was good because I drew my line in the sand.
Yeah.
And it was much easier for me to defend somebody else than it was to defend myself in those days. I'm better at defending myself now, apparently, because I can hang up on people. But I think that would be great if we could support someone publicly and say, hey, you know, that's not really appropriate. There's strength in numbers.
No, those are good points. And don't ever say whatever to Sylvia.
Don't say whatever to me.
Oh, whatever. So like, yeah, I mean, I guess that point, like what you did with that contractor, and just saying,
Yeah.
I'm hanging up now, which is so hard. And it's making that decision. So Linda, like, you're used to making or coaching us into making decisions. What do we do when deciding when enough is enough before it gets too much with a bully?
Okay, interesting question. So a couple things that I was thinking about. One is defining bullying, because bullying is somebody being targeted over a long period of time, a sustained effort, a deliberate choice to choose one victim. That's bullying. So Sylvia, talking to somebody on the phone once, although it can be an irritating phone conversation and a difficult one, it's not bullying. So defining bullying is important, because I think we mix up the terms sometimes. When we're treated badly, that's not necessarily bullying. It
was very bullying behavior, in that it was yelling, condescending, being critical, accusing me of things, that sort of stuff. So it was definitely bullying behavior, whether he's a bully or not. I don't know.
Technically bullying, because bullying can only happen over a sustained period of time in the schools, in the workplaces. So it is a person is being targeted over a period of time. So and what makes me think is we can have conversations about this, but I'm coming from a very, very privileged position, and I speak the language of our country, English. So the things that might help me and might support me are not going to support an immigrant woman who does, English as a second language, we cannot expect her to stand up to the bully or to, just try and help her deal with conflict. That to me is missing the point. That we really need to look at safe reporting practices, and really, as Rana was saying about having policies in place, to begin with. But Ali, you were saying too about prevention tactics. We have to look at what the work culture is in the first place, because a woman, who's an immigrant and does not speak the language, who is vulnerable, cannot quit, cannot say, fine, I quit, when they're supporting a family at home. So I think looking at it from that perspective, how can we support that person in that instance? And, I can't remember the woman. I wish I could remember. She does the safe reporting practices for violence against women on campuses. Do you know who I'm talking to?
Yes.
She's the
Mary Hall.
Yes.
Yes. So what brought her to mind was, that's what we need. We need an app. We need maybe that wouldn't work for
bullies. A bullying app. Okay, press it.
somebody-
Siri would come up. All these things you can say. Sorry, Linda. I know.
Some safe reporting practice that is easy, it's accessible, it's anonymous, it protects somebody's job. It's it doesn't put the onus on the victim.
Some of that is already in place, but
Yeah.
people are still not reporting. And speaking about, perhaps that immigrant person, they're not going to may not read the policy or follow the policies either if English is a second language. So, I mean, there is, I don't think there's one answer. I think these are all small pieces of the puzzle, that we make it safer for people to report, that we have a different, we put some effort into workplace culture. We have better policies. We have better reporting policies. We have, maybe there are, whatever it is, maybe there are, there's different training for HR, and maybe they spend more time working on these things. And I don't know what the answer is, but I think it's a multi-level answer. You and I have to come to our workplace thinking differently if we're working with a bully. We have to come up with a strategy. As a workplace or organization, there has to be strategies in place to deal with the inevitability of a bully showing up, because it's going to be a supervisor, it's going to be a dominant personality, it's going to be the negative Ned or the negative Nellie who becomes that person. So I think there isn't a specific strategy. I don't think anybody was saying that, but we have to come at it from all different perspectives. I have to have the tools to stand up for myself in the workplace. We have to have the tools to stand up for each other. The organization has to have the tools to make it easy for me and not threatening for me to seek help if I'm in that situation. And then, we need to look at workplace culture. Because our workplace cultures they're very poor. We spend 74% of our waking hours in activities related to work, and Canadians report it's their number one stressor. And it's not the work environment that we're reporting as being stressful, it's relationships, in particular with our supervisor or manager or the perceived leader.
And if you kind of think of it, if you delve into the mental health and you make sure that everything, people are happy, they're going to be better at their jobs, they're going to be better with their families, everything else. It's all kind of snowballs into that one happy effect. But I'm going to go back to Ali and Charlotte too. Ali, just because of we're talking about rights, human rights too. this plays a large part into people knowing their rights. And we had this conversation too before.
Yeah, for sure. I think that that's kind of goes back into prevention. That's kind of what I'm sitting here thinking about too, right? Is when you get hired, you, depending on where you're getting hired, that a lot of the time you'll get a little policy manual, depending on if they have those kind of things set in place. Not very many places do, but if it's a bigger place, I'm thinking particularly of like when I used to work at casinos and stuff like that, when they have those manuals. I think that what you should get right in the beginning is a, oh, can you hear my dog barking?
A
Like,
little bit.
does that not sound like I have a massive, huge dog?
Not that.
So yes, I think that knowing your rights and kind of having like a little care map, right? And I want to use the words plain English because that's what we're talking about everywhere right now in my work, is the use of plain English, which is putting everything using layman's terms for everything, speaking very clearly about what we're talking about, not getting too deep into policy work, and making it so that somebody who's never had an experience within HR or trying to navigate a policy can read it and go, oh, okay, I just got to go here, talk to that person, and then talk to another person. Is simply plain English. So that would be really really beneficial. I think I would really benefit from that even myself, right? There's so many different processes. So if the HR department, and hopefully the place has an HR department, a lot of places don't, if you're looking at a nonprofit or smaller organizations, and so getting those and having them in place, again, as a prevention would be awesome. But knowing that something's not right. Like, I've spoken to people who will tell me what's going on in their workplace, and I'm like, what in the world? Like, where is your HR department? Like, how are people getting away with this, right? But it's also because people don't understand that could be a reason for that person to be terminated, or at least really having repercussions, right? So just understanding those pieces. And a lot of people just think, and if it is somebody from a different country, I worked with a lot of different immigrants when I was working actually at the casino, and they were really, really unaware of the fact that what this person was doing was actually wrong. In a lot of different positions of power and hierarchies in different cultures, you just kind of, you don't speak back to that. You just kind of go with it, right? So it's a matter of understanding what is right, what is wrong. And, I guess another way to look at it is if they have videos and stuff like that, accessible videos, or learning sessions for folks who are just coming on board. But again, it's just understanding what's right, what's wrong. And, maybe that should be a small crash course before starting up a new job in the intermittent period, when before you're waiting to get signed on, the 3 weeks or whatever it is. Just, maybe that should be something and if you can't uphold those values, if you can't uphold that outlook that you want for that workplace, then maybe it's not the place for you. Or if you think it's a little bit fluffy and you're starting your job and you're going, what's this? Well, then, that maybe that's a good indicator that that's not where you should be. So I think it's knowing your rights is important, and knowing that people can actually get in trouble for being really rude to you at work, right? A lot of people just think it's like, they're having a lot of problems. Well, we all have stuff going on in our lives, and so it's about not bringing that in there, right? So just having those conversations, making sure people know this is okay, this isn't okay.
Oh, it sounds simple and civil.
Yeah, easier said than done, right? And
I know.
And that goes for all of it, even reporting or speaking up. And so it's kind of like fight or flight when you get into those situations. Sometimes you just don't know if you're gonna retaliate or not, or sometimes you may just keep quiet, like you said, when you're in bed and you think about it later or something like that, right? Like, it's just, we can say all these tactics, all of us can come up with all these strategies and ways, but when it comes down to it, it's a totally different situation. So it's just a matter of having these objectives in our head when we're looking at it.
So I'm going to throw it out there. I'm thinking now the sayings of getting to know your enemy. Yeah, and I'm going to use Charlotte. I know, getting to know your enemy. Sorry to say that. Or let's learn about the bully and keep the bully close to you. Befriend them even.
Yeah.
Like,
that can work.
It can? Like,
Why
I've
not?
tried to do that too, but it was like icky.
I always look at people like that and I go, okay, somebody loves you. I don't know why, but somebody loves you. So I'm going to see what it is about you that somebody might love. But it kind of goes back to, and then I'm gonna shut up and let Charlotte speak. But you know, it kind of goes back to something that we haven't touched on, which is maybe hiring practices. Maybe we need to, you know, do a little more investigation. Maybe we should focus more on gut feelings than skills.
Yes.
Right?
Or,
like skills can
yeah.
be taught, but how you treat people is how you treat people. So maybe we need to look at different hiring practices. Don't
I
hire the
think so.
bully. Wait
I
till they've
know.
had therapy.
At least once. Oh, and Charlotte, yeah, those spidey senses, right?
Well, I wanted to circle back. And so something that we teach in peer support training, and Robin and I, is exploring what the person's truth is. So thinking about when Sylvia was describing that experience, what she labeled as bullying on the phone, that's her truth. So, and you know, if Sylvia and I spent some time chatting about it, there's a backstory, but she chose to share that little snippet of that story that had a huge impact on it, which she is calling it bullying. If I delved in and we had a chat, he may have done things over and over again, but that was a snippet. And I think that when you define bullying and all of a sudden it's said, well, obviously that's not, because it doesn't fit in that parameters. But I encourage people to have a curious conversation. You know, was there other instances? You know, why are you feeling that this, you know, happened? You know, and Sylvia could say, well, you know what, I've been working with him for 6 months and he's been giving me jabs and this whatever was the final straw. Or, you know, like there's more to the story.
There is.
And no, I know. But so Robin and I talk about keeping our biases in check, keeping our definitions in check, listening to what the person is saying and allowing their truth and their experience and what they're sharing. So if it's bullying to you, Sylvia, it's bullying to you. Yeah. What I experienced, I'm labeling it as bully. There's more to my story, but my truth is it was a bullying experience. I would imagine if I asked Allie and her and I shared our common experiences, it was a bullying experience for her. Mm-hmm. So it's not because it's not fitting in your definition of it, like not be cautious that you're not invalidating the experience for the person, but you're empathizing with it. Yeah. And that's when change can happen within a workplace, because if your policy doesn't fit that bullying experience, is your policy correct? Am I covering all the check marks? Is there other experiences that are coming up? I'm working with somebody right now whose mental health is being, she's on a leave right now. They're blaming her mental illness. Is it her mental illness or is it a bullying? She's saying her boss is a bully. The boss is saying she's got a mental illness and she can't do her job. So I'm listening to her story, and it's going to be interesting to see where it goes, because, and is the policy correct? I don't know. She's labeled him a bully.
Rana, go ahead. You're on mute.
You're on mute.
But we still understand you.
Sorry. Yeah, I was just going to say, sorry, Charlotte. I was like, accommodation. You can't fire somebody because they have what's perceived as a mental illness. They have to make every step to accommodate this person. So I hope that they're working together. Sorry, and I just jumped into that because I heard that. And it's frustrating.
No, he's been documenting it for a while and has all these things.
Like he has all these things against her?
Yeah, her passion for her job is seen as she's in a psychosis. Her questioning what's going on is seen as non-compliant.
Wow. Okay.
You know, so it's an interesting one. Robin and I are quite enjoying seeing where this is going to go.
I'll just say, regardless of what he's writing down, the employer still has a responsibility to accommodate. So if she's saying she has some kind of issue that she needs some accommodation, like maybe not working with this person for 6 months and going to a different office or whatever it is. Sorry, let's not get into the legalities of it all. Sorry, it just
No.
clicked in my brain. I'm just like, accommodation. If I may,
Yes.
I just want to just mention the safe reporting component that we were just talking about. I think a really and I've seen this many times in employment law, in labor law, investigations like within organizations that are actually happening. The investigator is the people within the organization. I think that there should always be an encouragement to have external investigations, because at the end of the day, if you're working with 10 people and 5 of those people are investigating an issue, yeah, you kind of want that arm's length investigation to really objectively see, what a reasonable person would feel, that is how a reasonable person would feel, something that's happening. All that to say too is, bullying itself is very hard, because what a word or a sentence or an action that would hurt me or trigger me based on my own lens and my own history, it may not be the same for everyone else. And that's where that communication piece comes in, right? Like, you can maybe say something to me, and and Tracy knows, I have certain things that that trigger me almost, because they remind me of past actual bullying incidents. And this may just be like a quick moment in time where someone said something, but my perception takes me back there. So I get defensive, and right away I'm perceiving this as a bullying incident, which obviously there's something off about it. But the point of my story is, these are very subjective situations to begin with, unless it's overtly racist, sexist, or homophobic, basically, right? There's some things that are, without a doubt, need to be, considered. So I would say too, is that's why you really need that HR department. You need those people who are trained in place, who understand how to take those notes and be able to read between the lines almost. And that's kind of why I think Ali said that, is that those departments are so critical. And I know that there's a lot of places that don't have those departments. And that is, quite certainly a very difficult environment for people when they don't have the ability to go somewhere and make a complaint. So those are my 3 points: external investigations and just the safe reporting part of it.
So who would be the ideal personality to be in HR? Maybe a former bully. Is that even true? Is that even true? Can you be a former bully? Maybe that man that
Good question. No, that man is a current bully. There was definitely behavior over time, but that was that one particular incident when I respectfully hung up on him. Just put my big girl pants on and said, "That's it. I'm creating a very healthy boundary here right now." That's a really good question, because I have had. It has happened to me where I have reported bullying behavior to an HR person who told me that it sounded like I needed to take some time off work. That was her response to my complaint. So nothing was dealt with. She just encouraged me to take a leave.
And I
did not.
And I truly, and what we've talked about tonight, yes, HR, human resources, or whatever you want to call it, because it's not called HR a lot of places now, is very important. But more often than not, the people that are in those positions are not I don't even want to say qualified, because they do have all the qualifications, but they're not the right people.
Yeah.
And you know what? Linda's got her look on. Sorry, it was just.
But Allie's got her hand up.
Oh, and Allie too. Okay.
Yeah.
Allie, okay, you had your hand up, so obviously we can't let that thought escape.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
Thanks, Linda. I just wanted to go back to the subject, whether or not somebody can be or not a bully anymore. I think so. And the reason that I think so is because I have 100% in my adult life said sorry for being a jerk to you when I was in high school to many people. So again, I wouldn't call myself a bully. I'm sure people did call me a bully. I will put money on it, in fact. because I probably felt like that. But when I learned what that felt like and I understood that I was doing it, a lot of these people called me out later in life, which is awesome. I think it's awesome. Good for them. It's great. Like I have seen people after like big talks or something that I'm doing, I'm like, dude, you were so mean to me. And I'm like, what? Like I had this perception I was so nice to them, and they're like, yeah, like you were super mean. And like, so I have gone out of my way now to think of times that I have been maybe nasty to somebody and didn't even realize it. Like I really didn't think I was, but if I did, then that's that person's experience with me, and I'm not going to deny it or say no, I wasn't, because I frankly I don't remember, but of course I'm not going to deny it. So I think so. I go really, really far out of my way now to be the polar opposite of a bully, but I think they can. I try really hard to believe that people can change in all ways and learn from certain things. So I believe so. I'm not too sure. There are people who, have just get worse. And I think that just kind of goes back to our conversation about it gets worse sometimes after high school. But I've seen people that were bullies from high school and like seen them as adults. I'm like, oh, you have not grown out of that at all. You're still living in that, hey? So, but I mean, for sure, I've definitely had my fair share of apologizing if I've ever made anybody feel like they aren't welcome or comfortable in a place, because that's not my jam. So.
And I have to say though, Allie, that not only are you a better person for it, that you've got a better life, right? So it is again the whole mental health aspect and the empathy and the understanding too. So kudos to you. I guess you can be our poster girl then for
Change is possible.
It gets better.
Change, it gets better. Linda, do you want to add anything on can a bully become?
Sure. I would agree with Ali, is that the tools can be taught. Compassion can be taught. Empathy can be taught. We saw a huge learning curve in our country about racism and being anti-racist. And many people believed at their heart of hearts that they were not racist. And the unraveling of that understanding has been slow to come, but it's here, and people are learning better practices. They're learning, oh, when I say that is a microaggression. I had no idea. I've been saying it my whole life, did not understand it was a microaggression. Now I do. Now I'm not doing it anymore. Right? So we are capable of changing our behaviors 100%. So really it speaks to that education component as well, like talking about these things, learning what's appropriate, where our society takes a stand on big matters, gender, sexism, homophobia, where I do like to look to our political leaders to take a stand. What are they saying? And truly, it does filter down. It comes from the top down, and then it can also come at the grassroots level. So I do believe 100% people can change.
Oh, well, I think so too. And you know what? Even what we've talked about tonight has really kind of put a better perspective on things, And I think talking about it just gets things out in the open.
Absolutely. The stuff that we don't talk about is the stuff that breeds and grows. It's like mold, right? It just, if we don't put the light on, we never, we never really resolve these things. And it's not just for us, but, we're all fairly strong women, and hopefully by this stage in our life, we can all speak up, but there are lots of people who can't. And the statistics on how many people actually report bullying in the workplace, it's very, very, very small. It's less than 25%. It's
Wow.
a very small number.
Wow. So what was that statistic? 80% of bullies become managers?
80% of schoolyard bullies become managers.
Okay. Well, let's see if we can lower that. But, anyways, I think we, covered a lot of good ground and a lot of great information on just sort of coping with it and not to quit. Or maybe if you quit, then it was a sign that you were destined for
Exactly.
better things.
Yeah, you'll own your own company then.
Yes, your own boss. I know. You only have to answer to yourself.
That's right.
That's
I love my boss.
yeah.
Oh, she's great.
Well,
I bet
see?
you love your boss too.
Oh yeah, I know. Well, yeah, yeah. It's when you have those kind of self-arguments, then you kind of go, okay, enough. Thank you so
Exactly.
much for being here, Sylvia.
Thank
It's
you.
always a pleasure, and you're going to be here, I know, again, because this conversation doesn't end.
No.
And thank you, all of you ladies. Thank you for joining tonight. It's always a pleasure. And have a great evening. And just one more thing, if you want to do any shopping at Leonard Taylor, go to his website, leonardtaylor.com, and then you'll get 20% off if you use I Like Hue 20. So
Awesome.
wonderful spring
The
pants. And, everybody needs a t-shirt, so simple white tee. There you go.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay? Thank you, all of you out there, for joining us on Hue Living Room. We'll see you next time.